Um, so just to tell you a little backstory of the guest speaker we have on our call tonight, we actually met at Coach Summit in 2012, I think, which would have been my first summit. And I actually, at that point in my business, was actually really frustrated with where I was. And I ended up spending the majority of the lunch that we shared talking about how it wasn't working for me and what can I do. And I feel like I'm doing everything and why is it not working? And that actually is probably a lot of where I was with my business at that point. And Kevin and Milan ended up kind of taking me under their wing, even though I wasn't a personally sponsored coach of theirs, and mentoring me. And I've mostly been working with Kevin throughout the years, which I'm sure you guys, we've had him as a guest speaker a few times on our calls. And then recently, Milan and I kind of connected a lot on the Success Club trip in Cancun because we have similar backgrounds, nursing backgrounds. And we've both done shadow work and just realized that we connected on many levels. And I was talking to Kevin about the fact that I've been working my business, from my Ruby side, but my secondary gem is a Pearl. And I wanted to figure out how to be successful working my business from my Pearl side. So Milan and I have been set up calls over the last 3 weeks. We've been doing one-on-one weekly calls, and she's been helping me look at my system, look at my getting started, coaches started process and what that looks like, and trying to help me duplicate and help me be a better leader to the team. And Milan actually is one of the founding coaches. He sat down at the founders meeting with Carl and was asked to join the network, and she became the very first Beachbody coach in all of Beachbody. And she's been so gracious as to come on our call and share. And there's Kevin in the background. Hey! And share with us some of her wisdom. And I'm really excited for this call because I admire Milan a ton. I look up to her as a mentor and a leader. And I know that she's going to bring a lot of valuable information to our call. So welcome, Milan. Thank you so much for joining us.
Well, thank you. Thanks for inviting me. It's long overdue that I get to meet. I get to meet some of the team as I see you guys at events, and some of your faces are familiar, but you can't beat Zoom because now I get to know each one of you a little bit more personally. And I know there's a lot of amazing leadership on this team, new emerging leaders, and many of you have a vision for what you want to do. I'm hoping that some things I can share, and whether we have time at the end to ask questions, I'm definitely open to that. As Marissa said, the story for me is that I started my career out as a nurse and argued with the doctors nonstop. So realized that was a poor career choice on my part, a little bit too scrappy. But I was in the ER and started opening a bunch of urgent care centers and realized I really loved business, and I loved launching businesses in communities. I'm the youngest of 3 girls born to a Dutch immigrant family, and both my parents came to the U.S. As entrepreneurs, starting their careers here from scratch. So I was raised in that environment as well. Fast forward to the multiple phone calls we got from the Beachbody group. It was at that time Chris Simonian and Carl saying, "Come take a look," and I was super hesitant. I had just married Kevin, and we moved up to the wine country, and I was really, in my mind, kind of winding my career down. But I'll tell you that I had spent maybe 15 years or so in a role very similar to Jeff Hill, if you know our corporate team, responsible for a large market, traveling from one city to the next, working with people who were independent distributors, and learned a lot from that experience. The problem was I would get in front of thousands of people and say, live your best life, be true to what matters to you. You know when you're out of alignment because you can feel it and you get restless. And as I would talk them through this process, I would go to an empty hotel room to wake up the next morning to go do that again and again and again, year after year, 16 days a month. And my life was passing me by. And so I started to feel way out of integrity with my own life's work. And so when Carl called, I was struggling because the name Beachbody was difficult for me to understand. And I am, I'm 55 now, so I have a very active lifestyle as a great grandmother. So healthy to me might be different than healthy is to someone else. And I've always struggled with love being active, love doing sports, not a girl to go out to a gym and do a workout on a regular basis. However, nutrition and that aspect of life has always been something I've loved, and I've loved teaching. So what I love about Beachbody is that there's a place for everyone. And I think our theme this year is Everyone Matters, which couldn't be more perfect. So here we go. It's December. Well, actually, it was September of 2006 when we first met Carl and the gang and decided we were going to do this. We started with very little, barely a computer system that worked. Our official launch was April of 2007. As Marissa said, I was the first coach. And a lot of people say, oh my gosh, what an advantage for you to be the very first coach, because that basically means, you and one or two other people, everything's below you. Well, I understand that people could perceive it that way. The other side of that story is that there wasn't an option to fail. So I had left my corporate career, and this was not a put your toe in the water, let me see how well I can do, maybe not, we'll give it a go. This was an all in, we're making this work, and we're going to tough it out through not having Shakeology, not having the current Coach Online Atlas or any of those things. So what I want to share with you tonight is how important it is and what it meant in the building of our business to actually look at the power of duplicating the key things in the business and how you do that well. And a lot of times when people think duplication, they think, oh, yeah, that just sounds like really old school, and that do people have their own creativity and their own desire to reach certain markets. I'm not going to compromise that, because I think that's really important, and I'll talk about that towards the end. But where I want to start tonight, and I'm kind of looking at some notes as I'm talking to you because I don't want to miss a beat of what I wanted to say, and I want to keep this kind of short in honor of your time. So the first thing, the question I've been asking a lot of coaches that I'm mentoring one-on-one is, what is the experience that you want people to have of you in your life? It's a really important question. What is the experience that you want people to have of you in your life? Now, that might apply to a relationship. If you're parents, I think it applies to your children. But in our business, as a coach, what's the experience you want people to have of you? As a mentor, what's the experience? And as a leader, what is the experience that you want people to have of you? Because I promise you, they're having one. It's not something that you can hide from, or if you are, that's the experience they're having, right? That's what you're hiding. So what I want to encourage in this talk we're having tonight is that it's always happening. The idea that people are having an experience of you, and at any moment in time, you can change that for the better, which is good. When I first started, I had, I don't know what the initial team was. We had a little founders group of coaches. Most of them had never done direct selling or network marketing. They had never owned a business. They'd never had to work out of their home. They were Beachbody success stories that Carl had kind of chosen to be the first coach group. He had invited Kevin and I, because of our experience in helping people launch successful companies, to come head this group up. And so when I first started, without any of the skills or computer, what I did is I divided them into groups of 8, no more than 10. So I went to Tracy Morrow and a lot of those newbies, Pete Pena and Doug Fitzgerald, and there's many, Judy Ferrer, and there's a bunch of them. And I said, group of 8 or 10, put together as many as you can. We're going to go for 6 weeks hard together. And I'm going to teach you everything I know. I'm going to be very available to you. I want you to experience this in 2 ways. 1, you do the work for yourself. 2, I want you to think of how you're going to take this work that we do and deliver it to your team. So I actually did 2 rounds. I did the first round where they were really participating. I did round 2. Now it grew, I think we had 14 teams. So if you can imagine 14 hours a week, I was on these calls. We didn't have Zoom then, going through this getting started right system. And, but from that came coaches like Tracy Morrow and Doug Fitzgerald and Pete Pena, and there's countless others that I'm forgetting, Judy, all who have turned what was initially a fun idea into a business that's going to sustain them and their family the rest of their life. And that's what I want for you too. So in this 6 weeks, so I'll just give you an example in case you're curious. What we did is the very first session was really about, I wanted them to tell me what their perfect day was like. And this is what I know that looking at Marissa's system, what you guys are doing in your interview. We didn't do interviews then. We were spending hours on the phone just showing people how to use the back office because there was no training available like you have now. So we talked about your perfect day and your why as a foundational first step. Then we trained coaches how to tell their story in a few sentences, not the big long one. They started with the big long one, but they learned how to tell it in a few, and actually how to tell the Beachbody story. And Marissa and I were talking how that's kind of a lost skill in our coaching network today is I'm not hearing coaches as practiced at telling the Beachbody story. So I encourage this team to think about that because it's the number one way that I built our team. We actually had a session on setting up your office. So how do you professionally create space? It might be on your couch, like I think some of you are on right now. I can see Marissa is. Your comfy place, your zone in your house that you and your family acknowledge that when you're there, respectfully, you're working. And so we talked about how to set that up. Talking to people was a whole session. And then we had a really fun idea on marketing ideas. So we got together as a team and said, how do we want to put ourselves and our messaging out there? And last and the final was an action plan. So from that little 6 weeks, those little groups emerged things like the Simplified Network and Automatic CEO. And, Tracy now has her own training programs that she's emerging into leadership development. The 5 Steps Challenge group was something I think Tommy Migrant was originally the author of, but a lot of those ideas, the Getting Started Right was a booklet. Now and then it went to 2 pages and they're simplifying it. And now you guys have your own idea of what that needs to be. If you're not tapping into it, I want to highly encourage you to do that. And there's a couple of reasons why. It'll boost your posture and your confidence when you are bringing somebody on board, if you know that you've got something really successful for them to plug into. So there's 3 things that you need to acknowledge before you step into this. And the first thing is going to sound kind of crazy, but it is a decision that's a conscious decision that you make every day. And that is that you're in business. And when I say that, I mean, the answer yes to that is, this is not a toe in the water hobby. This is, I'm in business. I'm going to see myself in that role of being a businesswoman or a businessman. And I want people to be able to rely on me for that. If the answer is no, it is a hobby, it is kind of something fun, I am just putting my toe in the water, then there's room for that too. And you're welcome in that community as well. The challenge comes when you're expecting results, but you aren't really all in. And so acknowledging and saying to yourself every day, I'm in this business. I own this business. I'm building this business. The second thing to acknowledge is that you can do it yourself or you can duplicate yourself. So doing it yourself for many people can be a common place to end up because you have an idea of how you want to be a coach and you're in control of that. And you want it so much for other people that you end up putting yourself in a position of doing it for yourself and for them too. And that can be exhausting. So I think the second thing to acknowledge is, do I want to be in this in a way that I'm doing it myself and I'm doing it for everyone else? Or am I consciously going to build something that allows me to duplicate, allows me to see and teach what I'm doing in other people? And the neat thing that happens is when you're doing that, you're going to watch people below you thrive beyond even your own self. That's like the greatest gift and reward. Tracy Morrow is a phenomenal example of that for me. She came in this and said, look, I'm not a saleswoman. I'm going to go adopt 2 more kids. I've got a busy life. Don't turn me into something I don't want to be. That's kind of our interview started and ended right there. And what was important for me was to help Tracy learn how duplicating herself in her leaders was going to free herself to do even more and give it even more. The last piece of this that I want to talk about is to thrive without you. And hopefully, ultimately, at some point, that's the goal, that you can spend a week somewhere else and your business grows, whether you're tapped in or not. So you're in business, yes. That you are in this in the mindset of duplicating yourself, and that you can lead it to thrive without you is a really healthy place to start out. I wish I'd had that in the very beginning. I think in the very beginning, it was so important to me that this worked for everybody that I almost wore myself out. And so what I want for you is to early on start having a perspective about your business that's much healthier than I might have in the first 6 months. So every business does 3 things. Every business, whether we were selling pencils or we were selling, or we were having a boutique or whatever, doesn't matter. They do 3 things. The first is it attracts. So you're attracting customers and coaches to consider the value of our products and services. You have a way of doing that. Every business does. The second is that you enroll, or some people say you sell. But ideally, I like to look at it as you're enrolling customers and coaches to engage in the product through a purchase or a referral. I'm going to talk a little bit about that. And the third is you deliver on a promise over and over and over again. So your business every day is attracting, enrolling, and delivering on the promise. To the extent that you do that really well, and show other people how to do that well, is this thing can grow far beyond your imagination. I think we hit, over 60,000 coaches. I started with a list of 14 names. I don't know if any of you had a bigger list than that. Mine was 14. And there's nothing special about me in that regard. I think what I learned and what I'm wanting to share with you guys is the power of looking at your business differently than you might be right now. So for a customer, you're attracting and inviting them to consider a Beachbody solution for their healthy living. Some of you might be really focused on challenge packs and groups. Some of you might have a more specific way of leading them to picking the best program for them. Some of them, you might have a greater focus on nutrition. That's not the issue. The issue is that you have a way of attracting them. So what's your way? And if I'm a coach on your team, what are you teaching me to really start attracting? My first way to attract is to actually look at the people that are closest to you. And with Tracy, with everybody else that we started, when Carl Deichler said, we're going to have a meeting on this day, I had to invite people and said, look, I don't know where we're going with this. I love the idea. And I'm going to do this. Do you want to do it with me? That was pretty much how I started. So think about how you attract, what you do in your business to attract new customers and new coaches, and how you're sharing that with other people. Enrolling them is the same thing. So now I've got somebody that's interested. What's the offer? Do you use the, if I sent you this, would you take a look at it? If I gave you this sample, would you make a shake tomorrow? Whatever your if I, would you process is for enrolling people, and then being the advisor to them, teach that and make sure other people know it. And the last, I think, is for customers, you coach them to get results, prove your value, and then seek a long-term relationships for referrals. And I hope you're doing that. So with your customers have an amazing center of influence, even if they're struggling. So we started early on at Beachbody. We had something called the Success Link. So as soon as I'm a coach, I had a customer, I said, nobody gets left at the end of this chain. So we're going to have you find a buddy. So it's me mentoring you, mentoring a buddy. We used to call it a Success Link. It might have been before your time, Marissa, but that idea of Success Link, meaning nobody gets left behind, creates an automatic referral system. So I think thinking about your business from the standpoint of how am I attracting, how am I enrolling, and how am I delivering on the promise is at the heart of what you want to duplicate. So a lot of people ask me, like, when and how do you show people to meet, that you meet randomly this Beachbody business? When do you do it? Like, do you wait until they ask? Do you use videos and scripts? Do you invite them to an event? How do you actually show them the business? And my answer to that is that you show them how you do this business from the minute they meet you. And even if you don't think you have a system of duplication, I promise you, every single person who is experiencing you personally or through even social media like Facebook or Instagram is watching, learning, and most importantly, deciding if what you're doing is something that they could be doing. So you're always showing people what it means to be a coach, what it is to be a coach, what the work is like to be a coach. So one of my questions to you would be, what does that look like for you? Does it look calm? Does it look scattered? Does it look intense? Does it look compassionate? Confident? Are you shy? Are you convinced? Are you embarrassed? If you were to describe the experience that people have of you as a coach, this is a really, really powerful thing, because whatever it looks like is what you're going to attract. If you want to attract confident, compassionate people, you need to be that. And confident and compassion isn't being afraid to post something, right? Or hiding in any way. It's being very direct. So when people ask, how do you show the business? I really always am thinking I'm showing it to you the whole time, from the minute you meet me in the line at Starbucks until I'm, inviting you to take a look at something. Like, I use the if I would you. I tell the Beachbody story, and I usually say things. I'm a pretty soft person when it comes to, I'm not sure if this is a fit for you, but I work with a company that's doing some really innovative things. If I sent you something, would you take a look at it? It's something as simple as that. But I do it from a place of confidence. I do it really connected to them. So to kind of just move into the final part of what I wanted to talk about, let's talk about the experience that you want people to have of you. They're a coach and you're their coach. What do you do now? I think that there's 5 things that will make the world the difference. And as a collective group, when you're looking at your onboarding or getting started right, Marissa sent me the list that you guys use with the links. It's very, very good. The first thing, and here's what I'm going to tell you. You might not do all 5, but start with the first one and don't not do that. At least get that far, and then add the second, and then the third. So the first one is validation. When somebody enrolls, I promise you within a few days, they're thinking, can I do this and is it worth it? Can I do this and is it worth it? Over and over and over again. So you validating them early, congratulating them, letting them know they made a great decision, welcoming them to your team, telling their story, and enrolling them in that whole feeling of being welcomed and being validated. And that's why that right off the bat is critical. If you don't do anything else, do that. The second thing I'd say is setting their expectations so that they're clear and healthy. And everything, I believe in boundaries, mostly because I spent a big part of my life not having them, and it hurt. So I'm going to tell you that setting expectations with your new coaches is an important part of how you onboard somebody. And I think in GoPro, they have a segment on this. It's really important of saying the success is up to you. I'm going to guide you through this, but I can't do more than you're doing. You might say, I'm going to match your effort, those kinds of things. But ultimately, where you go with this is all about your commitment and your action. My job is to help you become independent from me. Do you agree with that? There's going to be ups and downs. And when there's downs and I don't see you involved, how would you like me to handle that? That's also good with your customers, by the way. But that is setting expectations with your new person that I think is going to clean up a lot of stuff early on. I also let people know that I had certain hours, how I had my work schedule. And that I started at about, I want to say 10 or 11 every day. And that there was one day that was dedicated to one-on-one calls. I didn't spread them out throughout the week because that was exhausting. And other than that, that I had some boundaries. I mean, we don't take electronics past a certain room in our house. So no electronics upstairs, no electronics in the bedroom, so there's boundaries around that as well. And I let people know that. So I think that's number 2. Number 3 is connect them to what they need to succeed. So make sure they know the basics. What tool do you use? They probably experienced that. You might have sent them a certain video that you liked or an article, or, if it's events that you use, get them into the event. So connect them to what they need. And then I think the 4th step is helping them get into action. So what are the first few steps? For me, it was, let's get really, let's have crazy fun with thinking about who you can reach out and help. And what we're going to discover without any judgment is some of those people you're going to help them more around the fitness because that's their need. And some of them are people, that already love fitness, and this is a perfect business fit for them. Which in the beginning for me, I had everything from stay-at-home moms to my second coach was a woman over 50 that was probably over 300 pounds with teenagers. They're both awesome coaches. So there's no stereotypical avatar I was going after initially. Now I know we do more of that. But when a new coach comes on board, I don't think it's good for them to narrow their focus too much. I think it's good for them just to think, who can you help and how can you help them? Here, I'm going to show you how to do that. So helping them get into action, and the 5th step was giving them assignments and deadlines. So remember when I had that first group and there was 8 or 10 per group, there was 14 groups and we went through 6 weeks, they had assignments every week. And it was really helpful for them to go through the learning process. And if they didn't do it, it was also a really good learning thing for them to find out what was getting in their way. So that is how we onboard. And that's part of a duplicable system that you guys already have into play. I think your initial, so if you don't do anything else, do that validation and do the interview. Start there and get really good at that. And then you can step into and saying, okay, now that we've got the interview, let me connect you to these 3 things that you're going to need to succeed. And here's your action items for the first week and your assignments. And that's kind of the second stage of really getting good at this. What's the most powerful affirmation that you can get and that they can get is a yes. It's by far the truth. And I think sometimes we tend to recognize people that get to Success Club 5 or people that rank up, as we should. But what we miss is all those little steps along the way. So focus on the skills they're developing until that yes starts to happen. Make them feel like you see their effort, acknowledge their learning, recognize their mile markers. When they created their first list, acknowledge that. When they added people to it, acknowledge that. And, if they want to, if they get their first no, what they learned from it, post some of that stuff on your team page. What people are learning from the challenges that they face early on, because what's going to happen is all the other newbies are going to go, me too, I know I can do this. If they can stick with it, so can I. I think a lot of times when you notice a coach that's tried really hard, I had a coach that did like a booth kind of thing, poured her heart into it, and then really struggled with the follow-up. But she learned how to get really good at it. So I told that story all through the whole process. Now, it ended up that a lot of people realized that start having a booth is probably not something they want to do. They learned from her experience because they weren't going to do all the follow-up. So I just encourage you to look at the little things and acknowledge them. Of course, then there's first coach and first order and first commission checks and all those things. As a team, have that be a part of your culture. Creating a culture that acknowledges effort as much as results is a really powerful thing. And creating a culture that I think that is a solid, consistent way for every coach to learn and grow, it's going to boost all of your growth because confidence happens when you know you can look at somebody across the table and say, here's what we're going to go do. And if you follow along, you're going to experience growth, personal growth and success at whatever rate you're willing to create for yourself. So duplicating the important things and allowing creativity and individuality to thrive is how people really enjoy being a coach. So if you haven't plugged in, and I know that I think as a team, you can also collectively say, you've got a really good start. In fact, I've got it right here. I'm looking at what Marissa sent me and how to take somebody from enrollment to, I would say, diamond is a really good path. And I hope you guys are all tapping into that and feeling the confidence of that, so that when you find somebody that says, I want to do this, but I'm not quite sure, you know that plugging them in will create the results. And that's really what I wanted. I think I started really talking about what do you want the experience to be that other people have of you, and then narrowing that focus into creating a way of being in the business that everybody will thrive. And so that's really what I had to say. I think Marissa jumped out, but if you guys have questions either about the journey I've taken, about the challenges I faced along the way, about, what do you do with somebody who is stuck, depending on time, I'm certainly available for that. So I'll turn it back over to Marissa.
Thank you so much. Anybody have questions or have a share? All the lines are muted, so if you want to speak, just go ahead and click on your face and unmute your line. I'm going to unmute everybody that's on the phone. If you can do me a favor and just hit mute on your phone so that we don't get a lot of feedback when I unmute them, and that way you'll be able to unmute your phone and talk if you want to, okay?
Question.
Okay, Steph, go ahead.
Go on.
Hey.
You mentioned that the things that people need to work on most is telling the Beachbody story. Like, we don't tell it very much more or very well. Like, what do you mean by that? What Beachbody story?
Thanks for asking that question, because it's been coming up for me more and more lately. So when I'm in the process of forming somebody and getting to know them, let me give you an example. So for a while, I had a lot of people curious about Beachbody, either because they'd used a program or because they kind of heard that we're growing and they didn't know the whole story. So we got very good at saying, here's how this, so here's how it would sound. So I don't know if you've heard about Beachbody. A lot of people are familiar with the company because they've seen our programs on television, stuff like P90X and Insanity. But the reality is, as a company, they wanted to be about much more than just DVDs in a box. So we started looking at who was getting great results. And what we discovered from our own customers was it was the ones who buddied up with each other. And that was the catalyst for us to create an entire community that allows people to really buddy up and be connected, first with a coach, but also with each other. And so we really committed ourselves to making fitness fun, nutrition simple, and surrounding people with the kind of support they need. That's caused the company to grow from, and sometimes I'll talk about this. It's caused us to grow so fast. And we're really just in the US, focusing on US and Canada now. And the truth is we can't do it all by ourselves. We need other passionate people who care about health and wellness and fitness and to help us get this job done. And I might talk about the cause a little bit. So when I'm enrolling people, I'm telling that story in a way that feels a little bit familiar to them. But what I want them to feel in that is we're doing something really cool and we need help. And that's how I enrolled everybody in the beginning. You know, I didn't have any video streams. We didn't really even have a back office, to be honest. So we were really good at saying, I don't know if you've heard of Beachbody, but if you're open to it, I'd love to share what's going on with the company and how we are setting out to make a difference in how people experience health and wellness in their life. That might be something that I say. And I don't know if that's helpful to you, but we just got really good. And so it became less about just my personal story and my own transformation, which a lot of times is very successful, but sometimes people struggle with that. They struggle either making it about them, or they're either telling too much, or they're not telling enough, or they don't feel like they have a story that's valid enough. But telling Beachbody's story was something we were always really good at, and I hear less and less of it now. So maybe it would be fun to just kind of write it out and run a few video streams of me telling it, and other coaches telling it in a way. It's almost what you would have if you were to have a presentation, but it's done much more casually. Does that help?
Yeah. So you're saying you're more focusing on the coaching opportunity as a financial and reward type thing connected to health, as opposed to like creating.
Yeah. What I'm doing is not saying, hey, do you want to be a coach? Because I found a lot of people are going, oh, I don't feel qualified to be a coach, or what is a coach anyway? Or I'm already too busy. Like, coaching sounds like a lot of work. So instead of leading with that, I led with, there's a company doing something really cool. It's very grassroots. They created a community based on their own customers to serve their own customers, and we're building that community. And it's created some, I've said it's created some really amazing success stories financially as well. So it's just my language around it that has been really successful, I think, causing people to look at Beachbody differently, because they might only think of them as they're the P90X company or the Insanity company, and we're a lot more. When I've said things, a common language would be they wanted to be so much more than just DVDs in a box, because what we realized from that is when you connect people together, magical things happen. Their lives change. And I used to tell the story about WOWY, which is then called the Super Gym. Workout with You is what that acronym started for. And that whole community, having an online gym where you could meet up with buddies from all over the world, really, as a free service, caused people to say, that sounds really cool. And it also allowed us to attract a lot of free members into our coach account. And that's a smart idea, to get a lot of free members attached to you. That makes sense to everybody?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, and so however you tell that story or learn that story, the truth is that the company everybody knew them as an infomercial marketing company, and a lot of people had a bunch of VHS DVDs on their shelf. And we set out in 2007 to change that and to become a company of connected people helping each other. And we created a financial model to do that. In fact, that's how I explain that we're in network marketing, is when we looked at the best business model to reward a coach to have a vested interest in somebody opening the box and getting results, we knew that network marketing had by far the best tested and true platform to honestly incentivize people. And that's why we became a network marketing company. We didn't become a network marketing company first and say, what kind of product can we add to this idea? It was the exact opposite of that, which is honestly what attracted Kevin and I to Beachbody in the first place, was Carl wanting to do it differently. So I hope this is helpful. These are good. It's a good question. Anyone else? What you might find is just telling that story, even if you do it in social media, could attract people to wanting to know more, because they might not have heard it that way before. Yeah.
Does anybody else want to ask a question? If not, then we'll go ahead and say goodnight. Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Well, it's not like I'm not going anywhere.
I'm just joking.
Yeah, if stuff comes up for you guys, you can easily find me on Facebook. And, I love what we're doing as a company. I love at the heart of it what you're doing as a coach in your own circle of influence in the world that you live in. And I know that, social media has certainly expanded that, but the intimate commitment that you make to somebody to say, I'm doing this, come do this with me. I'll walk this path with you. I might not be perfect, but I'm committed. And that is at the heart of everything that we're doing. And it's what's changing this company and causing it to grow the way it is. I mean, I love even talking to companies and bigger stories and saying, Beachbody's doing something unique, and there's got to be really creative ways for us to partner with them. So we just started to scratch the surface. I know Carl feels that way. Even with 300,000 coaches, we've just started to be the company we've always imagined being. And you guys are a big part of that. So congrats.
I've got a question, Milan.
Yes.
How do you get a coach to see kind of that this business takes a long time to build, as opposed to listening to the national wake-up calls and seeing your upline and your upline who has success already? Mm-hmm. How do you get them to kind of understand that it's more about helping people as opposed to the financial benefit, I guess?
That's a good question. I think I early on in the interview process, I really like finding out what they imagine is going to happen. So, how much do you see yourselves? And I work a lot with really busy people and a lot of corporate people. So how many hours would you imagine putting into this, or those questions right early on? And what would you, 3 months from now, 6 months from now, if you were putting in 10 hours a week, what would you imagine the net result of that would be? And so knowing that early on has helped me set expectations that are a little bit more realistic. I think one of the things we're up against is sometimes it's their own urgency. So sometimes they have a really big need, or a really big, I got to get out of this job, or I got to fix the situation. And they're bringing that into everything they're doing. And it can really mess it up, because all of that energy and stuff is what people are feeling when they're in the whole process of trying to interact with them. So cleaning that up is a really good idea early on. The only other thing I can share about that with you is slow and steady really, really, really wins the race. And if this was any other business, and I like to do that comparison. So I think sometimes we think in network marketing or social media marketing, and now you see all this content-based marketing and it looks like everybody's making millions all the time. I so don't talk about that. I stick with the one question I know people are asking every day: can I do this and is it worth it? Can I do this and is it worth it? And for some people who have unrealistic expectations, I don't think this is a good business model for them. I think they will burn themselves out. And if I can't slow them down and get them kind of grounded to the reality of this is not any different than any other business or any other career, then I don't want to see them burn out. So constantly getting back to that. And sometimes acknowledging a person, I'm like, I think you're asking if you can do this and is it worth it? And so let's get back to the question. What are you willing to put into it, and what are you expecting out of it? And is that realistic or not? I think one of the other hard things for people is wanting to control it all when a big part of the growth of your business is out of your hands. And trusting that if you stick with a system, that it will unfold, because it will. It always has. I've never seen it not.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of one of the biggest things that I focus on with my getting started calls with new coaches, is talking about the fact that it's inevitable that they'll be successful if they continue to work the business. And we focus on a huge part of the getting started call is not even about the tasks that they're going to be doing as a coach, but rather, what do they want to create with this? What is their vision for it? Who is the top person that they want to help with the physical, with the physical? Who is the top person that they want to help with the financial opportunity? And visualizing, having those people in their mind when they go to work their business, and finding a why that is really emotional for them, because I know that they say it all the time, your why should make you cry. And I've been doing 15 to, well, actually they end up being longer, like 30 to 45 minute Zoom chats with people that are not my personally sponsored coaches. Because at this point, I understand that the only way that this business for everybody to be successful is for you to be able to duplicate several levels deep. So I'm talking to people that are like 5, 6 levels down from me. And all I'm doing is reaching out to the people that I see in my downline that are actually doing something, because I can see that they're bringing in volume or they're earning some Success Club points. And I reach out to them and I say, hey, they know who I am, mostly because they're doing Coach Basics. Most of them are doing Coach Basics, in our Coach Basics group. And then I reach out to them and say, hey, I'd really love to meet you, in person and see if I can support you in moving your business forward. How do you feel about getting on a call with me? It's totally up to you, no pressure. And they're setting up a scheduled call with me, and I'm spending that time getting to their why. And these are people that I didn't even recruit. I don't even know anything about them. And the first part of the call is just forming them, finding out a little bit about who they are and their story. What do they want to accomplish in this business? Helping them to define their why and create their 10 out of 10, if you will, perfect day, and their vision for who do they want to help and what do they want to accomplish. So, don't be afraid to help your downline that's not your personally sponsored coaches, or don't be afraid to reach up to your upline and ask them for support if that's something that you're uncomfortable with. Because ultimately, if you don't have a coach that has a well-defined and emotional why, they're not gonna be successful, because they're gonna quit. And that's the real bulk of the call. That first call is spent helping them get to their why. And forget about Success Club, forget about selling challenge packs, forget about, it's helping them define their why. And if they have a strong, powerful why, belief in themselves, and they understand that it's inevitable that they'll be successful if they continue to do this, then you've got all the pieces for success right there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think, I agree with you, Marissa. I think at first, what I didn't know, sometimes whys aren't clear at first. I did not want to ever go work for anybody again. These are very personal. They weren't really, I wasn't like Mother Teresa trying to help the world. I was like, I don't want to ever go work for anybody again. I want to prove to myself that I can do this. I want my promise to people to be true. So when I sat across from somebody and brought them into this as a coach, I wanted it to work for them. And I worked hard to put systems in place for that to be true. That didn't exist back then, they do now. So then it was bring Kevin home. It was BKH all over my house, bring Kevin home. And it took me 2 years to do that, to replace both of our incomes. Was I driven? I would say that I was driven and generous with boundaries. People ask me that a lot, like, what did it really take? Driven and generous with boundaries. Important so that I didn't burn out. And I teach that to even women that are in careers right now. It's okay to be driven and generous with boundaries, always. So, good input and great questions. It's a great team. You guys are really a solid emerging team in the Beachbody world. When you say 300,000 coaches and you go to Nashville and you see 20 some odd thousand of them, sometimes it can make you feel like, wow, I got a lot to do. But the reality is this team is definitely one of the emerging teams in our United States and Canada, and under great leadership, bringing in really like-minded people who have a good heart and a good business sense too, which I really love to see. So hold on to this and stay focused. And I'm hoping a lot of you can be there in Nashville. And if you can't, be as plugged in as you can, because that's going to be another major surge for us going through the end of this year. Next year, we're going to be starting, I think, looking at even additional markets and products. So this is not a time to hunker down now. Yes.
So, we met in Cancun, so you know that my business has taken off fast. And my biggest fault, I think, is I don't start my coaches off correctly. I have a couple coaches on here, and they might think differently, but I know I could have started them off better. I didn't start off with the initial call that Marissa does and how she started me off, but I kind of had like my own internal motivation. And so I think it's hard for me to like think of the complete polar opposite of me. And, you know, realize that I know that not everybody's going to have that same like internal flame that I have for this. I mean, this is my field, but I have people that I've recently signed on, and it's like in my head, I was like, oh my God, they're just going to freaking take off as soon as they sign on. But then it's like, I didn't start them right. You know, like, I guess I'm looking for, not too late. Is it like what I did is I actually did send the first email, and I'm like, okay guys, let's backtrack. Like, I apologize. Like, I didn't start you off correctly. Let's do this over. And I'm going to try and do like the steps correctly. But it's like, I feel like I kind of need to do that with like most of my team. Because I don't why at all, because I don't have a strong why, but I'm successful. So it's hard to relate to that because I don't need the why to push me. You know, understand.
Yeah. So it's okay to start over. I always start over with what I call a confession letter. Hey, I've sent confession letters to customers because I've gotten so distracted. And it's an awesome confession letter. It says, listen, you haven't heard from me the way I had intended. I apologize for that. And the relationship I want to, and I'll tell the Beachbody story. This is what a coach is. This is why I'm here. Let's start over. And you win their hearts over fast when you do that. So confession letter or confession discussion is a great way to be humble and to be open and saying, they're always looking at you improving and being better. I think one of the hardest things is to want it for them more than they do, to let their actions tell you what they're really ready for. The most important part of that initial onboard discussion, as Marissa said, is what's your why? What's your perfect day? I mean, you know, and what are your expectations? What are you willing to put into this? And when you don't show up, when things go hard or you check out, how can I best handle that with you? Would you like me to check in, invite you to stuff, keep you in the loop? Because it will happen. Those are 3 really good things to talk about in the beginning. And if it's not in the beginning, come back at it again. We had a period of time, I think, when we did what we call as a blitz. It's really like, it was supposed to be for 3 months. It lasted a year. We were enrolling a ridiculous number of coaches. And there was just, what we learned from that is there's just no way to quality, you know, getting people started right, to do that in a quality way if you're recruiting 20 coaches a month. Not that that's not possible. Now it is. It wasn't then. And so I literally had to go back, and a lot of them were personal trainers because I focused on that for 2 years. And I tell you, I felt guilty. I felt like, oh, what, you know, did I not start them right? Why aren't they seem like so gung-ho at the beginning. And I will take 50% of that responsibility, but the other 50 is theirs.
Systems. Kevin and I did so many calls, and he used to tell me, you need to have a system, a duplicable system. And I didn't understand that because I didn't have mentorship. I didn't have a system that I followed. My, you know, journey was all over the place. So if there's anything that you can learn at this point in your journey, it's be systematic in the way that you start your challengers and the way that you start your coaches, and do it the same way every single time. And if it's not working, don't give up on it just because, you know, test it out for 90 days and then revisit it and maybe make little edits, but don't shift it, you know, all over the place. Cause I did that too. And that just makes your team like, you know, nobody wants to follow you anymore because they don't even know what they're like, oh my God, this is so disorganized. I mean, imagine how Beachbody is, but they keep rolling out with all these different things. So be systematic, test out your system, and then make small adjustments, you know, every 90 days or whatever, when you want to reevaluate to your system and make it better, because you're going to be constantly improving on it.
And if you're sitting there going, I don't know, I don't have one, I don't know how to create one, the whole idea of a system feels a little weird, you know, like too much. I'm just going to tell you that affirm them. Tell them they made a great decision. Post it on Facebook and welcome to the team. Do the interview. We used to call ours a virtual latte. You get yours, I'll get mine, we'll be on the phone, let's sort this out. Ask those 3 questions and then plug them into some kind of group. Kevin has a group, Marissa, you have a group, your other leaders have groups, get them engaged. If you don't do anything else, those 3 things are a system, and they're a great system to start with.
And the system that I have, that's the new coach process, is for you to use. And you don't have to be doing it exactly the way that I do it. But the reason I developed it was, because I wanted you guys to have a duplicable process, and it's working. So if you want something that is backed up by results, then look at it and make it yours, and make it something that you can wrap around, but, put it in your own words or whatever. But that system is working. So you already have a system that's in place that is working. So just, you don't have to reinvent the wheel, just make it your own.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, with your own flair. Mm-hmm. It's been great, you guys. Thanks for being on this call. And I'm just excited what is going to unfold for you individually and as a group. Between now and Summit, I know you guys have some great plans, but between now and the end of the year, I would ask you the same question. If you're asking yourself, can I really do this? And is it really going to be worth it? What are you willing to put into it, and what are you expecting on the other end? And if you don't know, sort that out and share it with somebody in leadership in your team. Good job.
And don't be afraid to reach out to me if you have questions for Milan too, because I can, get them answered from her as well. Thank you, Milan, so much for the time. We appreciate it. I know everyone's found a lot of value in this call, and thanks guys for being on. Next week, we're going to have Kelly Hanner sharing, I'm not sure what topic, but she's an elite coach from last year, and she's been my success partner, and she's going to be sharing, I think, digging into her downline or more about Instagram. We haven't figured that out yet, but we're going to have another guest speaker. So just to let you all know.
Awesome. Thank you, Marissa.
Thank you so much.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you.